Good morning, everyone. In the name of the UNESCO Office in Santiago and the IIEP of UNESCO, I would like to welcome you to the third meeting of our cycle, Digital Talent for the Transformation and Innovation in Education. As you know, this is a part of the ART, a space of cooperation that puts together academic networks, ministries, international organizations to contribute with strategies to help our goals of equality and inclusion in education. We are in a very significant moment of our itinerary. I would like to summarize what we have done so far. In our first meeting on September 4th, we established a diagnostic of the region about the challenges and the opportunities of digital transformation to achieve the goal for Latin America and the Caribbean. We explored the conceptual framework and we reflected upon the urgent importance of overcoming the fragmentation of policies through a systemic approach. In our second meeting of September 25th, we delved into the governance, leadership, and development of capacities as pillars to guide this transformation. We learned that without governance and effective leadership, our initiatives might fragment and generate an inefficient use of resources. Today, we're going through a specific step in this transformation. We're going to be talking about 2 of the 6 central pillars of UNESCO for the digital transformation in education. Infrastructure and connectivity on the one hand, and also the pedagogical solutions and digital pedagogical solutions. These are the 2 topics that we will go into in this meeting. And why is it so important to have it all so integrated? Because we, as a region, we have the challenge to ensure that each school and each student has not only connectivity that is significant and the appropriate devices, but also platforms that are safe, that are inclusive, and that are culturally pertinent, that may lead to quality learning. We know that we have inequalities in infrastructure and access to pedagogical digital resources that reflect the inequalities in gender, race, and class, and they even deepen these inequalities, taking opportunities away from children, teenagers, and teachers. Education transformation is not only technical, it's deeply political and requires that we think about these pillars as an integrated system. Infrastructure alone doesn't change education. We need pedagogical solutions that are robust and that give meaning to this technology. That is why the reason of this meeting is to create a space for reflection and dialogue about the challenges and opportunities to create material and pedagogical conditions that make possible this digital transformation in an equality, people-centered way in the education field. We want to not only analyze the present, but also project strategies that are concrete for the future to guide public actions of the ministries and the leaders and all of the communities in education. We are going to propose an amazing panel that will help us go through these thinkings, these complex but urgent challenges. These are specialist voices that offer different perspectives on different levels of intervention on a global, regional, and pedagogical level. With this purpose, I will give the floor to my colleague, Fernando Salvatierra, who will explain the specific challenges that we face and the dynamics of the panel that we're going to offer today. Good morning and welcome all. Thank you so much. As you said, today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of the educational transformation. And maybe we should be honest about the structural complexity of what we face and the urgency of coordinating integrated responses. The data that we have are strong and they make us face realities that are a little uncomfortable. Only 43% of the schools in our region have access to computers for educational purposes, and only 30-something% have connectivity that is enough. And these numbers even hide deeper inequalities. In some countries, we see significant advances in some urban areas, but in rural areas and in vulnerable communities, the inequalities, the gap is even wider. So the challenges are not only technical, but they're deeply systemic. And we're talking about great inequalities because we know that many schools don't even have more basic infrastructure such as electricity. And we also talk about significant connectivity when we see that the differences between areas in a same country, region, or area are terrible. And we talk about devices when the models of distribution and maintenance face challenges of sustainability in terms of financial and technical issues. So we need the coordination, a coordination that is key for us to be able to understand how to coordinate infrastructure, policies, and the pedagogical needs that have to be really transformed. It's not just digitalizing regular processes. We have to think about how the platforms and the development of contents, of digital contents, and the pedagogical models can answer to the needs that are specific to these contexts. To talk about these complexities, we have 4 important voices that have complementary perspectives. We're going to start with Adele, who, through her leadership in GIGA, is going to give us a general overview. Then Sergio Scarabino from ITU South America will help us understand the specificities. Then we're going to move on to Juliet Norman-Smith from UNICEF, who will talk about the pedagogical heart of the solutions. And we will end with Hector Ceballos from TEC Monterrey and his experience, who will show us how technological innovation, artificial intelligence, and intelligent systems can potentialize this or drive this ecosystem to change the experience. So without further ado, let's go to the first intervention. As we always do, each intervention has 5 minutes. Then one of the panels may comment or make a question. And then we will have an ending for each block, for each part with 2 minutes. So first, global strategic frameworks. Adele, let's start with you with a global perspective that is fundamental to our dialogue. From your experience leading GIGA, the joint UNICEF and ITU initiative to connect all the world's schools to the internet, you have a unique vision of the landscape. The question is, what are the strategic frameworks that we need to address this challenge of school connectivity at a global scale? And what specific learnings from international experience can inspire and guide Latin America and the Caribbean in this process? Adela, your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Fernando, and thank you, UNESCO colleagues, and thank you for everyone who is here and for welcoming us to your session today in Santiago. It's a privilege to be among all of you and this amazing speakers with me today. Maybe I can very briefly talk about GIGA and this joint initiative of ITU and UNICEF. Currently, we are engaged with over 45 countries around the world, and we hold a simple belief, and that's that every learner deserves a fair shot at the future. And we believe that the connection still is a reliable method for bringing the education and the new technologies to the school. And with that, we are hoping to bring more opportunity and information to students, to youth, and to people in the community who could also benefit from the connectivity. We don't only connect schools for the sake of cables and towers. We connect them for for a girl who is in Isen who can see the same biology exercise as the boy who is in Bogota, as a teacher who is in Santiago, perhaps, and this access to lesson, to opportunity and to information is something that is in the core of our mandate. To answer to your question, Fernando, in GIGA, I'm leading the UN engagements. We are a team in ITU together with UNICEF. We have a team in the country engagement. We have a team for specific financing issues, contracting issues, as well as the technical part of the story. So maybe what I'm sharing here is a sort of summary of all of these colleagues and teams that are working individually on different scenarios. And perhaps a three pillar that maybe we can share together for how we can have a successful school connectivity program in a global scale could be first to understanding where the schools are located. Understanding the data. You mentioned also, Fernando, my Spanish is not that good, but I tried to also understand a little bit from your conversation that data matters, and data is something that we still are neglecting it in many of our decisions that we are taking. So you cannot connect what you cannot see. And GIGA starts first with mapping the location of the school and starting to understand where the schools are located, also where the infrastructure is, and what is the constraint that exists in the region. So by having this data first approach, we are trying to also make the measurement for the rural areas, for the areas that are underserved with connectivity, and bringing this data visible to the decision makers. So I would say then the first pillar for us is data. The second is to turn this data into scenarios that can become an investment plan. So we create this, we analyze this data, and we create different scenarios and evaluate those across fiber, cellular, point-to-point, microwave, satellite, and we try to minimize the cost per school that can maximize the number of students that are connected, and let the ministers and regulators and operators, whoever is the decision maker in this specific context, to look at this scenario and decide on which is the best or the least cost path for the financing plan. By bringing these two into table and on the table, we also believe that the third pillar is really to work together with partners, private, public, government, and aligning our objectives together and trying to really help the communities and also the people that are most in need for this benefit, and really trying to have a clear roles and shared accountability for this project that we are doing together. On the specific region that you asked, on Latin America, my colleague here, Sergio, perhaps would be the person to respond and to elaborate more on it. But in GIGA, we are active in Honduras, Brazil, and Panama. And we see what you also just shared earlier in the call. We see that across the region, there are different scenarios and different needs depending on the disparity between urban and rural areas, indigenous and coastal communities. So they all have different needs, and we understand that there's no one size fits all solution. And GIGA is not at all trying to enforce any solution for all of these different countries with different needs that they have. So we always try to look at into different scenarios, as I mentioned, into different data, and really trying to connect as much as we can and adapt as much as we can our solutions to the scale and to the need of the country. So, which I think it's great. Thank you. I just can end here, which I think is a great lesson learned also for us to see different scenarios with different glasses.
Thank you, Adele. Now we would like to invite Hector to react to Adela's first presentation and maybe comment or ask a question. Thank you, Fernando.
It's impressive, and yes, of course, the data is relevant, and having access to internet is very important for deploying now systems that will be used for supporting students and also teachers in learning. Talking about that, what role do you think that data analytics and artificial intelligence will play once these schools are connected effectively the way you are talking about? It's a requisite to have collect all this data for having a data analytics. What you're doing is helping these schools to open the possibility to collect that. But if this is not happening yet in some regions, what alternatives will have these schools?
Thank you so much, Hector, for the question. Yes, we do believe that data is important, and this data is to make decision with. Is not just a presentation or a slide where the output is a phase of deployment plan for operators that can really make financial plan around it, investment plan around it. So it is very critical in our project. However, I believe now the combination of data and AI are the force multipliers. As much as I believe connectivity and data that we are collecting from the governments are important, I think with the help of AI, we really can make sure that wherever there's something to flag that on the digital exclusion, on the language that are missing, on any other possible mistakes that human can make, this with AI, with artificial intelligence, this can be prioritized and really make sure that everyone is benefiting the most from the solutions that we are providing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. You're muted, Fernando. Fernando.
Excellent. Thank you, Adela. Sorry, my microphone was muted. Thank you for your intervention, for your perspective that is opening up our scenario on a regional level. Thank you, Hector, for your comment. And now I'll give the floor to Amparo to move on to the second part. Thank you so much, Fernando. I'd like for us to welcome Sergio from ITU, and we will go deeper in our region with the experience of ITU in Latin America and South America. We know that the challenges of infrastructure in Latin America and the Caribbean have very particular characteristics, and I'd like to bring to the table the crucial elements that are mentioned by the UNESCO in terms of infrastructure. We know that it's important to have stable electricity, energy, connectivity, and that we have wide access and satellite solutions and for vulnerable and remote areas, and also access to devices and hardware. So my question to Sergio is, which of these elements do you believe we should prioritize for truly equitable digital education information in our region? And what concrete strategies have you seen that work to overcome the structural barriers that we face? Welcome, Sergio. Thank you, Amparo. I'd like to clarify for those of you who don't know us, ITU is internet. Sergio, I'm sorry, we're seeing you sideways. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, yeah. If you want to change and maybe have us. No, no, no. No, yeah, I'll just stay here. Yeah, at least we can see you. You were listening, right? Yeah. So I was saying that ITU, International Telecommunications Union, our organism of 160 years old, has started with telegraphs, and we're talking about all technologies. We've evolved over time, and as Amparo was saying, we also coordinate with satellite, and I will try not to bore you with the technical issues, but going to the question of what we should prioritize, of all of the things you mentioned, I think we have to prioritize everything, unfortunately, because without electricity, you don't have any possibilities of connectivity or of having a minimal network for devices to be connected to. Without the fiber, you cannot have an important or the necessary connectivity. So this is the main problem, and the resources are a problem too, because all of the governments are interested in providing broadband connection to all of the schools in their territories. They believe this is important, but it's not as urgent as other issues, such as solving poverty or things related to urgencies that are even humanitarian in some of the countries, which draw resources away from connectivity. We've understood over time how important connectivity is since the telephone, the landline telephone, and ever since internet came up and everything that has to do with the digitalization of processes in general, both in terms of knowledge and economy. Today, including health, including almost all of the verticals that are now digitalized. So more than ever, we share how important it is to provide good connectivity. The situation in the region today is that, in theory, all of the territory of the Americas is covered with available connectivity, because you can just put up an antenna, a satellite antenna, in any place in the region and automatically connect to a satellite. But then we start talking about differences in technologies, and we've talked a lot about the low orbit satellite networks that provide instant connection. So coverage is not a challenge today. This has been solved. The issue is access, because of the costs, because of how difficult it is to reach schools that are in the middle of a mountain with an antenna, with an electricity again. So there's a huge difference between what is there in terms of connectivity in urban areas and the rural areas. And we have to add to that the fact that or the things related to how we are actually. All of the governments, once they have provided certain connectivity to schools, they just check it out of their list and they say, well, fine, we have a high percentage of schools connected, but actually the quality is very relevant. So many of these schools that are connected, and sometimes with subsidies from the government, then when the government changes, they lose their subsidies and they never advance in terms of the quality of this connectivity. So if we want to give them a lot of content to the schools, we have to have broadband, we have to have technology that sometimes doesn't have to do with this checklist that's okay, this school is already connected, we don't have to look into it anymore. So these are the challenges that we have. We have alternatives and we have infrastructure. So the important thing is to work to prioritize and follow up properly on the type of connectivity that is being provided to each school, because as I insist, quality today is very relevant. If you can, we should prioritize education this way, which is often left behind in terms of other urgency. So we have to look for other stakeholders. We have to do partnerships with the private sector for these resources to come up, and so we can provide this connectivity on this quality. Thank you so much. Sergio, I'd like to invite Juliet Norman from UNICEF to comment on your answer. Juliet, welcome. She has connectivity problems. I think we should go back to the question. Okay, Sergio, what we'd like to ask you now after this first intervention is to hear a little bit about these elements of infrastructure that are actually the basis of all of the digital transformation. What specific characteristics does this infrastructure have to have? And I think it's very important what you're saying, that it's not just about installing or implementing it, it's following up on it. But which are the characteristics or the basic conditions for it to actually be able to support and drive educational solutions that are focused on the rights of the child? Well, as I ended up saying, it's the importance to be able to ensure the broadest band possible. We're not going to define it in technical terms, but we should try to have the possible broadband, the widest possible broadband for the school, so they can have video calls, so they can download videos quickly for the contents that they need. So again, how can we do that? Assigning resources. I can tell you that here in Chile, I'm based in Chile, there is a case that is very interesting in a high school. I think it's in San Nicolas, a town around near Chillán. So it's a really small town, but this high school, they managed to, through negotiations that the institution made, they not only got enough broadband for their students, but they also stimulated their teachers to make use of it, make the most of it. So this is also something that is complementary, because once you have the broadband access and you have the possibility to digitalize processes within the school or the university or whatever, the importance of training teachers for the digital inclusion to be real. So from teachers to students, and the possibility of having devices that also have to do with the resources and the allocation of resources and where to get resources. The technical possibilities are there. So it's best to get on the land over land because it's usually cheaper, but the difficulties, as always, is about prioritizing. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you. It's very clear, your message about the broadband. Thanks for bringing it to the discussion, how important financing is, and which is what sustains the insurement of connectivity. And thanks for bringing the example of San Nicolas. We know this very well. It's a very important practice of how the entire education community and the rest of the community of the village are organized through the school and creating very interesting ideas and sustained and very committed ideas and projects. So now I'll give the floor back to Fernando. Thank you, Amparo. We have a connectivity problem with Juliet, so we will try to change the order and go to the part where of innovation. There she is. She's coming, connecting now. Let's see if we can have her over. Hi, Juliet. Well, Juliet, we were just about to invite you. Juliet, we would like now to go to the big question that we have in this dialogue, which has to do with more pedagogical issues. Would like to ask you regarding your role in UNICEF as an innovation specialist and under this unique perspective of how pedagogical solutions may and should respond to actual needs in learning. When we have this infrastructure that Sergio was describing, and when we think about learning platforms and management systems and the development of content and the pedagogical models, such as even hybrid models or evaluation systems so the question is, how can we ensure that all of these pedagogical solutions actually respond to the needs of the learning of children and teens, as they also respect and promote their fundamental rights? Tell me if were able to hear, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Fernando. So I think it's a really, really interesting question because there are two parts to it. There's the first part or layer, let's say, related to your comments about, does the actual digital infrastructure respond to pedagogical needs? And then there's the second layer about what slots into that infrastructure, that digital ecosystem layer, which we can think of as the user-facing tools or the edtech software itself. Do those respond to teacher and learner needs? So I'll frame what I say today around these two parts, and I'll share examples of UNICEF's work in both. So let's start with the first part on digital education infrastructure and how we can make it safe from a rights perspective and fit for purpose from a learning science perspective. So when we talk about digital education infrastructure, each element of that infrastructure needs a strategy behind it for it to be safe, sustainable, and impactful on education. That means that you need a school connectivity strategy, a device strategy, a public digital learning platform strategy, and an evaluation or procurement strategy of edtech tools. And oftentimes these strategies will need to be in partnership with other government ministries beyond just education, because funding streams are coming from different sources. So one of the biggest challenges is that those sources may often be short-term and reactive. I think we've probably all seen it before, but for example, a big grant might be secured and devices and software are purchased, and then within 5 years, perhaps they're outdated or unusable or just simply unused. And so this cycle of fragmentation can be expensive, it can be inefficient, and it's definitely unsustainable. So I think my first message is that we need long-term education sector planning that includes these elements of digital education infrastructure into its strategies and into its budget lines. So I'll use devices as an example before getting to that outer layer of pedagogy. So it's not just about procuring a device, it's about having a strategy around the devices that support teachers and students of different ages and different learning needs. So this means we have to ask, are we choosing the right devices and services for students and teachers? Are they age appropriate? Are they durable? Are they flexible for different learning environments? And do they respond to a real educational need? So these can ask questions like, does every student really need their own personal device? Or can we be strategic about shared device models that promote collaborative learning? And are we sure that whatever is chosen is also lightweight and resilient to potential connectivity interruptions? And then, of course, very important, what about security? When teachers and students use those devices to interact with digital platforms and edtech tools, how do we ensure data protection while keeping device management simple for school leaders and for teachers as well? So you also asked about relevance. We know that technology investments can often lead also to rapid obsolescence. And capacity building here, I think, is the key message. So it's a huge part of countering this idea of short-term cycles or lack of sustainability. Even the best device and cybersecurity strategies won't work if teachers don't have the training to use them and maintain them. So we really need strategies around both hardware and software that focus on the change management and the capacity building part. I want to just briefly say this is part of our work on the Gateways initiative, which of course is a UNESCO-UNICEF joint initiative on public digital learning platforms. And for those who are not aware, the Gateways has many components, but one of the primary components is the creation of a normative instrument called the Charter for Public Digital Learning Platforms that was actually presented at UNESCO's Digital Learning Week in September and will soon be open for public consultation. So I'll post the link to the draft that is currently online, but we talk about all of what I just mentioned, the idea of public digital education infrastructure and the need for equity and inclusion and offline compatibility to be sustained throughout the very design of that digital education infrastructure. So overall, from that infrastructure perspective, what perhaps is most important is ensuring that all of the pieces of this complex procurement puzzle, that we don't leave out probably the most fundamental question, which is, will teachers actually want to use it in their pedagogical practice? And will they use it safely and inclusively in their classrooms? And then the other part to that is, can we generate evidence around this to understand that user viability, safety, and scalability part? So this question around teacher interest and teacher engagement is of paramount importance, and that's what will bring me to the next layer, which is about what sort of slots into that digital education infrastructure, which we can think about as the user-facing tools or that edtech software itself. So you were asking, how do we ensure that all of these digital pedagogical solutions truly respond to the learning needs of children? I would answer that by saying, actually, that for them to respond to the needs of children, they have to respond to the needs of teachers. If a tool is not useful for teachers in the classroom, that solution will end up likely collecting dust. So a key way to make sure that it's useful for teachers is involving them in the development of the solution, as they're the ones that are actually going to use it. So I'll give an example. That's what we're doing with our accessible digital textbooks initiative.
We are on time, Juliette.
Okay.
But we have 2 extra minutes for closure, so keep thinking.
Great, thank you. I'm ending with my
So,
example.
entonces, ahora invito a
I will, if you're okay with it, I will invite Hector to maybe comment or react to your speech, and then you have 2 minutes after that. Okay.
Gracias. Thank you, Juliette. Very interesting point of
Perdón,
view.
perdón. Sí, dale. Me confundí yo, pero vamos.
Okay.
I made a mistake,
Just
but okay.
Very interesting. Important to have access is not the complete solution, right? You need to do something with once you have that access. But in this case, how can you support those regions that doesn't have access? This plan that you are mentioning includes a pathway that schools can follow in order to get there. But before getting there, having the right strategy, pedagogical strategy for dealing with or supporting students.
Absolutely. So I think you come to a point about, Fernando, should I go ahead? Yeah.
Before you answer, I would like to invite also Adele to make a comment and reaction, and then you can react to both of them. Go ahead, Adele.
Hey, thank you, Fernando. Then you have to give more time to Juliet. No, just joking. No, Juliet, well, I love how you bring everything together from the lens of pedagogy and what you mentioned about devices, security, data protection. All of that is also very important for the work we are doing in Giga. So maybe my question is actually complementing what Hector was saying, is how can we make sure, how can we embed all of these into the plans from day one, so we make sure that connecting a school also enables great teaching and learning for students as well as teachers.
Absolutely. I mean, they're great questions that I think point to the necessity of having a system framework and a system approach to every single decision that we make in digital education transformation. And so that means that you have to look at the linkages between the content and the capacity and the connectivity and the cost and sustainability, the budget lines. And so that's why we have with UNESCO, UNICEF, ITU, GPE, and a range of public and private partners created that systems framework of 6 pillars. So I want to say, in addition to that, once we actually have the connectivity in place, just to finalize what I was saying before, how do we know if solutions are working? We need to generate evidence and look at the evaluation mechanisms to see the impact on learning and on teaching. And I think that that's another piece where there's a lot of guidance needed. How do teachers know what solutions to invite into their classroom? How do they know which ones will work? How do they know which ones will work, Hector, to your point, without connectivity? So from UNICEF's perspective, we also have a global evaluation framework called EdTech for Good, where we're looking at scalability, we're looking at safety, we're looking at impact on learning, we're looking at design for teaching and learning, and we're looking at the ability to reach all. So those factors of offline, online compatibility, low resource contexts, and those are ways to create those pathways of solutions that work both in the short term and the interim as those connectivity plans for universal school connectivity are being put in place. So I think you're absolutely right, Hector. We need that sort of twin track approach, investing in solutions that work for more sort of fragile environments from the infrastructure perspective, while also trying to very strategically close the gaps on that infrastructure in the long term. So I'll post a link as well in the chat to that EdTech for Good framework. It's a public evaluation mechanism to look at that software piece, that solution piece, and make sure that it's fit for purpose for a classroom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. So glad we could solve the connectivity issue and you were here with us. So it's been a great contribution. Now, yes, I'm going to give the floor back to Amparo for our fourth part. Thank you so much, Fernando. Now we would like to invite Hector for his main intervention. We're going to close our panel with your perspective from the Tecnológico de Monterrey, which is a very important institution with a great work in digital transformation. And I would like to mention 2 initiatives that you're working on, Living Lab and Data Hub. You have unique experience in intelligent systems and machine learning applied to education and educational innovation laboratories. My question is, once we have the infrastructure, connectivity, and digital pedagogical solutions we've discussed, how can intelligent systems, artificial intelligence, and technological innovation make this entire digital educational ecosystem be more effective, personalized, and student-centered? What role do innovation laboratories like yours play in this transformation? Thank you, Hector. Welcome. Thank you, Amparo. I will actually reply in two remarks and 2 points. When we don't have access to internet to all students, we do have connectivity for the management systems, but we can have information from schools. We can have their grades, we can have the follow-up, what they're doing, what activities they haven't done, and all of this information we have made available for researchers through Data Hub. So actually, what we wanted was to create predictive models. So we understood that by offering this information, the institution also has information on how to improve its support systems for students. Not everything happens in the classroom. There's also things that happen outside of the classroom that could be moving on, even when students don't have connectivity enough. So in this sense, this would be one of the first points that we can offer. It's an innovation laboratory, as you said, because we provide data, anonymized data to create predictive models. So this is a way to promote research and bring tools for our mentors, those who have the ability to personalize solutions for students according to the context. So this is what we have been doing with Data Hub. We have also been developing competences. We've been researching what are the competences that have to be developed first in terms of complex thinking that will, in the future, be beneficial for students. So we have done several researches that even when the student doesn't have connectivity, but the support system does, so this can be used to support this personalized recommendation. We also do this learning lab, living lab, where you have where we can assess how students are during class, and we have hybrid classes. So we have post-graduation groups where we have in-person students and students that are remote from other states in the country. So this is the first effort that has been done to measure the engagement of students in the classroom. So we're using neuroactivity sensors, biomarkers, and with this information, we're crossing data in both models, and with machine learning, we've been able to tag levels of attention and concentration. So we're using these standards to analyze. We have done a trial with 3 students. We're monitoring them, and we're being able to monitor 10 students at a time. But the idea is not to bring this into the classrooms. It's just to learn from these experiments. For example, what's the attention span of a student? So you have a post-graduation class that starts at 3 in the afternoon and goes up to 7 in the evening. So how we can identify which strategies to use when a class is this long. So according to different times of the day, we can have a baseline of what's the attention or the attention span. So we can also try different pedagogical strategies, so we can see how the students respond to that and define policies. And through the publications that stem from these studies, they can also be taken to other institutions, to other levels, and maybe contribute to this improvement in education. Maybe not, these practices can be done elsewhere. For example, we have done a pilot in topics such as like an escape room, or so how the group feels during this activity. Are they learning? Is it measurable? How do they feel during the process? So this is what we're trying to study. This is what we're working on in Living Lab, particularly in the Learning Lab. And I will share the link with you so you can know the initiative. Thank you so much, Hector. There's no doubt that the academia can bring us so much information, and how interesting this research that is so interesting and being done in our regional context. So because there are characteristics that are pertaining to the culture and that are very typical of us, and it's so good that this is being developed here in our region. So this also gives us the idea to continue talking about this. But I would like to invite Sergio Carabino now to comment from his perspective on what you have shared. Thank you, Sergio, and thank you, Hector. First of all, just in the chat, everything has been posted, all of the links that we've been talking about. Hector, for us who are a few years old, what you're saying sounds like science fiction. So to see what the technological innovation is doing today to optimize the educational ecosystem is fantastic. And it's really surprising because technology keeps moving forward and we try to follow it. And I was talking about the regional infrastructure and how we should try to bring this infrastructure to educational institution. And you were talking about the idea of maybe getting connection for a while and then working offline. So I'd like to ask you about that. What sort of technical infrastructure, because since you're looking you're looking from the user's perspective, do you think we would need to support these intelligent systems? And with the innovation labs that you were describing, particularly with the resource limitations that we were talking about in the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is my question. Well, first, you don't have to have all of the students connected to start doing something for them. If you have data, you can invite experts who can do something, who can start doing something. Technology is advancing. You can have predictive models that can be explained. You can have customized recommendations, something that we didn't used to have and now we do. For someone who writes code, it's very easy to write a predictive model. It's really surprising. And customized recommendations also, they're very more achievable. So inviting experts, it's just all you have to do is try to find someone who's looking for data and who can do that. So it's just, you have all of the information, you just have to anonymize it and preserve the identity of the people and share this data and find someone who can access this data, and someone who's actually waiting to do this. So this is the first step. And then when you have access to technologies and students are leaving their digital footprint in every platform they use, you can also access this data and find the recommendations. For example, how long you should dedicate to working on the platform to make it effective, to make the learning effective. So this is also something that can be done by analyzing data. But I insist you can start right now with anything you have, doing partnership, looking for collaborations. And I'm sure there's a researcher looking for the data that you have. So this would be a good starting point. Excellent. Okay, go ahead, Amparo. You go ahead. Okay, so actually, would like to thank you so much, Hector, And thank you, Adele and Sergio and Juliet, for sharing your perspectives and your experience, for taking the time to share with us. I think you raised the bar on the debate about infrastructure and pedagogical solutions. Some of the main ideas that we're taking away from this are the need to think about infrastructure in a comprehensive way, not just about connectivity, but also electricity, sustainable energy, devices, the management of all of it. Secondly, the importance that pedagogical solutions are actually centered in the rights and the needs of teachers and students and their learnings, not because we need to digitalize. And thirdly, the absence of the urgency of collaborative models that can scale these solutions to a sustainable way. We've heard the challenges are very complex, but we do have real opportunities in the region. And these experiences that are presented by Giga and the pedagogical innovations that have been put forward by Juliet. So this is the basis where we can build this digital transformation, so we don't leave anyone behind, and we can place technology in service of education. We'd like to thank once again our 4 panelists and tell all of the participants that we're going to have a last meeting of the cycle on November 13th, where we're going to be talking about sustainability and financing of policies, closing our trajectory in this cycle. And now I will give the floor to Amparo. Amparo, if you want to close the session. I would just like to also thank our panelists for their generosity, for their time, their deep reflections. It's so important to have these places where we can reconnect or connect with the latest things that have been done in the region, and with the reflections that Adele and Juliet brought to us, bringing the global perspective, and to each of the participants in this session who it's actually motivating to see so many people connected, and this makes us even more committed to bring interesting proposals for discussion and reflection. So thank you so much. So thank you so much, and we'll have a 2-minute break, and we'll say goodbye to our panelists. Thank you so much, and we'll have a 2-minute break and come back to those who are in the course of digital talent, the students, the people who are taking the course for our workshop today, which is a closed workshop. So those who are going to be who are in the workshop, you can stay for 2 minutes, and we're going to move on with our workshop. So we have 2 minutes, and we'll be back.